Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Power Automate Desktop Training Tutorial. My name is Vishal Bamlani, and in our session today, we will learn about the loop actions provided by Power Automate Desktop. The loop actions that will be covered in this session are loop, for each, loop condition, exit loop, and next loop. So let's start with our first action, which is loop. So first, let's learn something about loops. So basically, they can be helpful in automating repetitive sections of our desktop flows and avoid running the same actions multiple times. Here, I've listed down some useful applications of loops. So first is we can make use of them to perform some specific number of repetitions and iterate through data. Second is we can even use them to repeat actions until a condition is met. Third is we can iterate through the items of a list using for each loops. And fourth is we can explicitly end loops when required. Now let's proceed with our first action. So this action of ours helps us to iterate a block of actions for a specified number of times. So it gives us three properties. First is start from, wherein we have to specify the starting point of the loop counter. Second is end to, wherein we have to specify the ending point of the loop counter. Third is increment by, wherein we have to enter the incremental value that the loop counter variable is increased by. Let's see how we can make use of this in Power Automate Desktop. So first, let's create a new list in which we will add some items using the loop action. So to create a list, we have action called create new list. Drag and drop this action, and let's give it the name list1. Now to add multiple items to it, let's make use of loop action. Drag and drop. Let's add 10 items to this list. Start from 1 and to 10 and increment by 1. So this means it will start from 1, it will increment by 1 till it reaches 10. And each index will be determined by this particular variable, loop index. Okay. Now to add items to this list, we have an action, add item to the list, drag and drop this action. Here under add item, let's create some dynamic values, value followed by a space and then our loop index. And this will go into the list variable list1. So basically we are trying to enter 10 values, the first value being value 1, and then second value 2, then value 3, value 4, value 5, and so on till value 10. Let me save this and run the program. Our flow execution is complete. Now let us check our list variable. So it contains value 1, value 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we have created a list of 10 items using loop action. Now since we have a list of 10 items with us, let's try to access each item of this list using for each action. So basically this helps us to iterate over items in a list, data table or data row, allowing a block of actions to be executed repeatedly. It has one property, value to iterate, wherein you have to specify a list, data row, or data table value to iterate through it. Let's see how we can use this action in Power Automate Desktop. Under Actions pane, search for each, drag and drop this action, and enter a value to iterate. Select the list variable, and each item will be stored into the current item variable. Let's save this action, and let's display each item using display message. Let's display each item using display message and a message to display. Let's select the current item. Let's run this flow again. So this is the first item, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and the last item, which is value 10. Now, if we look adding items to this list using loop action, here we specifically mentioned that we want this loop to run 10 times, right? And what if we want to add items until a certain condition is met? By this I mean, let's ask user to input some value wherein he will let us know how many items he or she would like to add to the list. So we can do this by loop condition. Basically, it will help us iterate a block of actions as long as a specified condition proves to be true. It has three properties. First is first operand, second operator, and third, second operator. The first property specifies a value name defined by a previous action, text, number, or expression to compare with the second operand. The second property specifies the relationship of first operand to second operand. And third property specifies a value name produced by a previous action, text, number, or expression to compare with the first operand. Let's see how we can make use of this action in Power Automate Desktop. Here, let's disable these actions. Let's take the input from user using display input dialog. This is the title of our dialog box. So let's give it input information. Second is input dialog message. So this will be the message to the user according to which he or she will enter the information we want. So let's put in, please enter the number of items to add. So if you want some default value to be put in, you can do so. Then another property is input type, which gives us three options: single line, password, and multi-line. Since single line suits us, we'll go with this option. And if you want to keep this dialog box always on top, we can enable this toggle button. And the variable produced is user input and button pressed. So if I open this, so the user input is a text variable. Now, since we're expecting a number to be entered, we'll have to convert this particular variable to number. Let's click on save. Now to convert text to number, we have an action called convert text to number. Drag and drop this action here. Under text to convert, let's choose in user input, and the output will be stored under the variable text as number. Click on save. Now we know how many times user would like to add. So we'll also need a counter variable to make a count of how many items have been added so far. So let's use set variable action to declare a variable. Let's take it int loop count and initialize it to 1 as the default value. Now let's bring it our action, which is loop condition. Drag and drop this action. Now our first operand would be loop count. So it will start from 1 and it should be less than equal to the entered number by user. So let's take a text as number, click on save. So this particular loop will run until the number entered by user. Let's add items to the list using add items. Re-add item. Drag and drop this action here. Let's add dynamic values, value separated by space, and then into loop count into our list variable, which is list one. Click on save. We also need to increase the loop count value using increase variable. Variable name into loop count, and we have to increase it by 1. Click on save, and let's run this flow. Let's say we want to add 7 items to the list. Let's click on OK. The flow execution is complete. Let us check our list variable. So value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So 7 items are added. Click on close. Now let's take up one situation wherein once our fifth item has been added, we don't want any more items to be added onto our list and we need to terminate our loop. So we have an action called exit loop. So basically it helps us to terminate the loop and the flow resumes at the next action or statement following the loop. It has no properties. Let's see how we can make use of this action in Power Automate Desktop. So after the fifth item has been added, let's check one condition using if statement. Let's drag and drop this action here. So if our counter variable has value 5, then exit the loop. Under action pane, search for exit loop, and drag and drop this action here. So this means once our fifth item has been added, our counter variable will be having 5, and once it reaches the condition, it will exit the loop. Let's run this flow. Let's add 8 items. The flow execution is complete. Let's check our list variable. So it contains value 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we wanted only 5 items to be added, post which we had to terminate our loop. And using this exit loop action, we were able to do so. So let's try to add one scenario here. Apart from adding these 5 items, let's try to skip second value to be added onto our list. So we can do so by using next loop action. So it forces the next iteration of the block to take place, skipping any actions in between. It has no properties. Let's see how we can make use of this action in Power Automate Desktop. Now, since we have to skip second value, we can check it using if statement under actions pane, search for if, drag and drop this action here. So if our counter variable has value 2, then we need to skip further actions to execute. So we can introduce next loop action under here. Now, if we have the value 2, it will forcibly go for next iteration and it will not let all the actions that are below to execute, which means it will not increment the counter variable as well. So here we'll have to increment the counter variable first for it to complete the entire loop. So this way, once it will reach the value 2, it will first increase the value and then forcibly go to the next iteration, which in turn will not let this condition to be true because our counter variable will have value 3. So it will go with the remaining set of actions and complete this entire loop. I hope you're able to understand this. Let's run this flow. Let's try to add 8 items. The flow execution is complete. Let's check our list variable. Now, as you can see, after value 1, we have value 3, 4, and 5. So it skipped value 2 to be entered onto this list. Let me close this. So this marks the end of our module. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would request you all to subscribe my channel for more videos. Also, I have listed down some suggested videos as well as the ones next in line for your ease. Cheers.